active week. We'll do some heat building movements, but we know we have to balance things out, right? So we will do our active heat building movements, and then of course we will calm things down and cool it down at the end. Let's begin standing in mountain pose. We can turn palms forward, give shoulders a roll, back and down. Might feel good to put a little bounce in our knees. And I'll give us a thought to begin with. So, there is an idea in yoga. Jon Kabat-Zinn talks about this in his book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. This idea of noticing times when we meet obstacles with harshness, or when our own reactions to ourselves or others are too harsh. And even though we are getting into an active, fiery yoga practice, let's avoid meeting it with harshness. So we can meet it with strength, power, heat, fire, agility, whatever it may be. But if you notice yourself getting kind of harsh, overly critical, tough on yourself, let's see if we can meet the movements in a different way. So with that idea in mind, let's check out how we're feeling, scanning the body head to toe. Maybe inviting some softness into the body anywhere that there is harshness or unnecessary tension. And let's turn our attention towards our breath. We can actually take hands to belly to begin. And let's take a few belly breaths here so we can relax our abdominal muscles. And then let's change this to what is sometimes called exhaling with exertion. We'll inhale into the belly. And then on our exhale, really using the abdominal muscles to pull in and push the air out. So we have this really dynamic flow in the torso as we breathe. Belly relaxes and expands, and then belly tightens and contracts. And then we can make it more of a rib breath. We might even like to take a hand to our ribs, front or side. Inhaling into the rib cage, feeling the ribs expand, front, side, and back. On the exhale, pulling our bellies in. Holding that contraction on our inhale so that mostly the rib cage expands. So there is still a dynamic flow. We're not so tight that we can't breathe, but we're firm in the belly. We can add on, and with our exhale, pull up and in with the pelvic floor as well. So inhale, ribcage expands. Exhale, pelvic floor lifts, and the belly draws in. So this is our internal fire, building heat from the inside out with our core muscles. Let's do one more like this. And we'll sort of lock that in, but it's a soft lock. It's not too tight. We'll still be able to have some movement. Let's add our circle sweep arms to this. We'll inhale overhead, and then exhale, hands to heart center. So we can still keep our attention on expanding the ribs up and out. With our inhale, as we reach up, maybe feeling more expansion out to the side, and then with our exhale, our abdominals are still pulled in. And there is actually a recommendation in Ayurveda. If you are that really fiery, peppy, go, go, go kind of person, exercising at 75% of your full capacity. So those people who tell you, gotta give 110%. If you are a person who naturally gives 110% anyways, we're supposed to back off a bit when we practice this kind of fiery yoga. All right, we'll bring hands to heart center. And if we're at the top of our mats, we'll step open wide. So I know I'm wearing dark socks on a dark mat, but toes turned out not as wide as a ballerina, but a little bit of turnout. And at the bottom range of motion, we should be able to see that our knees are right over our ankles. If your knees are wider than that, just take your feet wider as well. So we have this nice stacked line. We can inhale up and out into a 5-pointed star. And then exhale, let's make a muscle. So we can squeeze our fists really tightly here, lower down as low as we like. That's our pattern. Inhaling up, exhaling down. So we can have a lot to think about here if we like. Squeezing our muscles in our upper body, kind of showing off here, and also pulling the heels towards one another. The feet won't actually move, but we engage the muscles to pull in so they don't slide apart. Let's warm up a hip hinge here. So now at the bottom range of motion, we can still bend our knees, but we're going to tip forward with a flat back. So that we're working our core from a different angle. We can sort of scoop something up underneath us and then reach overhead. So this is our sunflowers flow. Moonflowers is when we do the straight up and down. And feel free to do the hip hinge, sunflowers, or that straight up and down that we started with, moonflowers. So we're warming up range of motion in our hips and thighs because our warrior series is coming. All right, we'll do one more variation here. We can keep the legs down, we'll stand tall, and then we take our hands over top of our feet. So this is sun pose. We're going to reach up and touch our fingertips, and then lower down. Perfect. Let's keep our posture tall and confident. Again, if our feet are slipping apart, we'll draw our heels towards one another. We can still be sitting our butts rather than down or forward, a little bit back and down. And then the next time we're down there, let's stay down there. We can draw the thumbs back even more to get a bit of a stretch across the chest. And let's lift one heel at a time. So we're warming up our ankles, adding some more core challenge and balance challenge to this. You might like to rest the arms. We can get a bit more out of it if we pull the belly in and again draw up through our pelvic floor, or you may know them as Kegel muscles. If we're quite daring today, we can lift both heels at once. All right, we'll take our hands to our hips. Let's turn our toes forward. We don't do this one too often. Let's alternate a side lunge. So in a side lunge, we have to stick our butt back on one side only. So we're bending one knee, knee over ankle, and then the other leg is straight. We come back through center, and we go the other way. So you might get a bit of a stretch through the inner thigh. You might get a bit of a stretch through the outside of the ankle as well, but I'll show you from the side that there is a lot of sitting down and back. So this leg actually looks like a squat position or a chair pose. And then the other leg is straight. So we've been working on our core, our solar plexus, and in the chakra system or chakra system, this is the element of fire. And we can fire it up even more by adding a twist. So we can reach overhead, and we can give ourselves sort of a hug in front and behind. And our twist mostly happens in the upper body. So you can see that the knees are still staying in that same range of motion, but the shoulders are turning. So we're controlling from sort of our six-pack area. We might even like to put our hands there as we twist to make sure that we're using those muscles to get where we're trying to go. All right, let's pick a side to hold on so we can lower down, maybe a bit lower than we went before to feel a stretch through the inner thigh. And we can take our hands to our thigh, maybe our hands to the floor, and some of us might like more of a twist. And again, hands to thigh or floor. Let's take it the other way. Slide back, we still have our knee over our ankle. We can twist from the thigh or from the floor, or maybe no twist at all. We'll come back through center. Let's go ahead and bring our feet together. If you're stepped wide, you can step to the top of the mat, and we'll go through our chair flow here. All right, so we'll lower down and back into chair. Making sure, of course, once more, roughly knee over ankle, we can see our toes and give them a wiggle. And then we have some options with our chair flow here. So often we inhale and sweep overhead and bring hands through heart center. We're going to inhale up and exhale down. Although you might find reversing the breathing makes it easier. But I'll show us some arm variations. So sometimes it's nicer to be into a wide cactus arm to feel more stretch across the chest and shoulders. Sometimes bringing fingertips to shoulders to remind them to roll down and back can be helpful. It can be nice to counterweight your butt going back by reaching the arms forward. So any of these options are totally fine, as long as we feel like good, solid, secure, comfortable range of motion, and a good challenge for our muscles. Not too much, not too little, just right. Then let's meet at the bottom range of motion. Again, it might be easier to reach forward to counterweight your butt going back. Counterintuitive, it's usually a little easier if we sit lower as we lift one heel at a time. Noticing all the muscles that are working super duper hard, and then we ask them to work a little bit harder as we lift both heels at once. Maybe we get that moment of flight, we hold at the top. Lots of work for our core and our glutes. Maybe lifting through the pelvic floor a little extra. All right, we can let this go. We can come back to standing. We can give our legs a shake. And we are going to make our way down to the mat. We can swan dive to get there, inhaling up, hinging from our hips on the way down. And let's make our way back into child's pose. Having a moment to catch our breath. And a little pause. Let's walk the hands to the right. Pull back. We'll feel the stretch in the left. We'll switch it up. Walk left, pull back, feel the stretch in the right. We'll come back through center. And let's make our way to all fours. For cat and cow. And we want to keep the strength in our hands, right? So we actually, it's called a hand lock. The same way we kind of locked in our abdominals, let's lock in our hands. So we're either spreading our fingers wide and pushing down through our knuckles and fingerprints, or if it's more comfortable, we can come onto a fist. Yogi's choice, we could try both. We'll inhale to prepare. And as we exhale, let's treat it like a crunch, really pulling the front of our ribs to the front of our hips. And then let's treat it like a crunch for our back muscles, pulling our shoulder blades down to our tailbone. All right, let's flow with this image of crunching front and then crunching back. The next time we're in cow pose, let's pause there and hold. Length through our hamstrings and our abdominals. And then we'll come back through to a neutral spine. Here we go. Strength and core. As well as we can, let's not have any shifting side to side. So we're going to keep our weight centered as we tap fingers to opposite shoulder. So it's actually pretty easy to do if you let your body weight sway. Much tougher if you keep centered. It makes it a little easier if I'm lifting the left hand, I'm pushing the right hand down. And then vice versa. Lifting right, pushing down with the left. And we're going to add on opposite hand and leg. We go for a little walk. So I'm pushing down, right hand and left knee, and then lifting up the opposite. So pushing on a diagonal, and then lifting the other two free sides. We can make it bigger if we feel stable. Stamp the foot to the ceiling. So I'm pressing down, left hand, right knee, and then I'm freeing right hand and left foot. I hope our wrists are okay. Remember, we can rest if we need to. If we want, we can make it much bigger. But let's keep this idea of stability going. It's easy to do this if we're just like flinging our body around. Again, if we're letting ourselves kind of sway side to side, it's easy. It's tougher if we pull from our center and keep our hearts over the exact same spot on the mat. If we really want to try, we can tap hand and foot in behind. But let's remember this idea of harshness. Can we work at 75% capacity and be kind to ourselves and still build heat? And let's choose our favorite resting pose to recover in. So maybe child's up on our forearms. May even be a seated position. Maybe down dog. We're going to get off our wrists and work our lower body. So if we're okay to go there, we can go from downward facing dog. We're going to move into a lunge with our right foot forward. So if we're in down dog and we love down dog, we could give it a little pedal. We can lift the right leg and give it a shake. But let's meet with the right foot in front. And we'll come up to standing in a tall lunge. All right, we'll begin with our hands on our hips. We may even like a hand to our core or our ribs to make sure we're still breathing. We're going to drop the back knee down a bit. and then stand up again. So it doesn't have to be a huge range of motion. If you're tight in your quads, this one can be tough. If you do a lot of this, like a lot of boot camp classes, and you're accustomed to taking your knee to the mat, okay, by all means, you can. So again, let's work for that Goldilocks position of getting a good level of challenge. Okay. If we want, we can inhale overhead, and then exhale, pull in strong. The same way we were locked in with our hands when we had them on the mat, let's be locked in with our foot. Our ankle and calf muscles are working. And we're ready for a break. Let's go ahead and take our hands down. We can step back, and then it's up to you, child's downward dog, or anything else that you find restful at this moment in time. Maybe cat and cow, maybe something else. So we work hard, and then we recover properly. We've got to make it even on the left side. Here we go. We can give our left leg a lift. We can shake it off. And if you're not in down dog, then this gives you a little bit more time to get into the lunge. But when we're ready, left foot forward. Here we go. Building heat, building fire, high lunge. We'll find our balance, making sure that we're breathing, core pulled in, lots of expansion in our ribs, right? When we're ready, inhaling up, exhaling, we pull in. Let's make our way back down to the mat. And same idea. You know how to rest, however you need to. Child's, down dog, maybe even a moment to lie in sleeping crocodile. We're going to give our lower body a break and come back to our upper body. So let's start in child's pose. And we won't do too many of these, but let's come forward into a kneeling plank. And on a breath out, we're going to do a very small range of motion, push up. That's all it is. Back to child's. We'll inhale to prepare. And then exhale as we come forward and put a little bend in the elbows. So I'm emphasizing a little bend in the elbows, not because I don't believe in your ability to do a really deep push-up, because it's just a good way to warm up the range of motion in the shoulders. So after we've done a couple like this, we could always leave it if you have a shoulder or wrist issue in just the plank. If you love a lot of upper body work, of course we could do that too. Remembering that our hands are locked in, we're pressing down through our knuckles and our fingertips. Give it one more if you love it, and then again, we'll pause. And let's make our way to a kneeling position. If knees are a trouble spot for you, we could do this seated or standing. We're going to work on our spines. So let's go ahead and take right arm to the sky, left hand to hip. We're going to push down through the right knee as we reach up through the right side of the ribs. And with each inhale, we should feel inflation in the underarm, side of the ribs, kind of side of the brow line area. But let's make sure that we're not doing a lot of movement in the pelvis. So we can keep our hip over our knee. Let's switch it up. Here we go. We push our left knee down first, and then we can rise up. So usually, the yoga community calls this rooting to rise. So we root down first. We'll go once more each way. Let's add on a touch. So we'll take this arm up as we did before, but then with the option to bend the elbow and squeeze your bicep. So really squeeze the right bicep and pull over. Let's take it the other way, coming back through neutral. Left arm up, really squeeze the left bicep, and then open the side of the ribs. So they call this reciprocal inhibition. Squeezing one side of the body loosens up the other side of the body. Okay, we're gonna come back to our lateral flexion. Let's start in downward facing dog. We'll go into our warriors. So from downward facing dog, we can sweep the right leg to the sky. And then right foot between our hands, coming up into warrior one. Strong, solid base. Maybe just for today, we take our front foot over to the outside edge of the mat so we have a little bit more space, a wider base. That might feel nice. We'll pull up tall. And for some variety, let's open into cactus arms here. Holding, feeling strong. Noticing our internal heat. Even though our muscles are working, are we greeting this pose with harshness or something a little nicer? Let's take our fingers to our shoulders and we'll swing open into warrior two. We can take our back foot further back and make some adjustments. Might be nice to lift the heel or toe. We can take hand over foot, front and back. Active in our hands, active muscles in our feet, our calves and ankles are working. And we could just kind of hang out here all day, or we can really draw up. Big inflation in our ribs, pulling up and in the core. Okay, a neutral spine. We'll take front hand to front thigh and a long straight line through the body. We can reach our top arm in behind our back to our opposite back pocket. So if this is our left hand, reaching it in behind to our right back pocket. We might like some more strength. We can hover our front hand. And let's add our lateral flexion. Front arm to the sky, our knee goes forward, and we open the front side of our ribs. You got it. We'll make our way into triangle pose. I hope we have warmed up our inner thighs sufficiently. Let's take our hands to our hips. And rather than our hips being centered, let's off-center them. So we put our pelvis on a diagonal, and it'll give us some more space to move into in our triangle pose. Same thing if you're really tucked under, tip your tailbone back on a diagonal. So back behind you and back to the back edge of your mat. And you should notice, I hope, that that opens a little bit more space underneath you. And yes, we might go quite low in our triangle pose, but maybe not. Our rest. Let's take our hands down and we'll turn our toes to the long edge of the mat for a wide-legged forward fold. And we can still be active without being harsh by pressing our feet away from one another or pulling the feet towards one another, noticing how each one feels for you. All right, let's repeat the same pattern on the other side. We're gonna walk our hands to our new front foot. So that may mean turning away from me, but I believe in you. Warrior one with our left foot in front. Let's reach up and then open arms into cactus or any other favorite arm position. Maybe we're noticing some fatigue in some of our muscles, maybe our shoulders. Can we make it through with softness? We'll take fingertips to shoulders, stay open across the chest as we rotate into warrior two. And then we'll stack shoulders over hips, hands over feet. Might like to lift the heel to settle in. All right, without any side bending, let's come into side angle. So a nice straight line in our spines. Right arm can reach overhead. We have the option to bring our right hand in behind to our left back pocket. And if we want, we can hover the front hand to keep our core and our lower body really working. Our legs will stay exactly as they are. Let's side bend. So our knee can have the energy of kind of slicing forward as the left arm reaches up. We'll come back through center. We'll take our hands to our hips. As we straighten our leg, let's take our tailbone diagonally to the back corner of the mat. And if the hips are pressed forward, we'll push them back a little bit. If you don't believe me, try it the other way. Try to keep your pelvis centered and forward, and you'll have like no room to move into triangle pose. But if you move your pelvis out of the way, now suddenly there's space to drop into. And we're ready to move into triangle. Here we go. So yes, we could collapse our hand down our leg, but let's see if we can stay a bit lifted. Our abs are still working. And our break is coming. Let's come into wide-legged forward fold. Turning our toes to the long edge of the mat. We might like a wide-legged downward dog. Walking our hands forward into a downward dog position and sliding our hips back. So we get the nice upper body shape of downward dog without the same amount of weight on our wrists. And our legs can be bent or straight in wide-legged forward fold. Maybe we want to bend one knee at a time.
let's walk our hands to the original top of our mat, and we'll make our way back to child's or downward dog. Option to rest or flow through a push-up if you would still like to build heat in the body. And we'll make our way to a standing position. So maybe down dog, forward fold, and then reversing our swan dive up to standing. And let's bring our heart rate down with some balance poses. Let's do eagle for today. We don't usually do this one, but I thought, okay, we have this fiery class. Let's, like a phoenix kind of thing. Let's do another bird pose. We'll do eagle. Let's pick our good side. So eagle is where we kind of sit at a tea party. Let's pick a good leg to come up and over, whichever feels like a good side to you. The opposite leg, ideally we stack knee over knee. If you have hip issues, you might want to be much wider. It's all good. This is pigeon, this is eagle. We're still dealing with the bird family. All right, so we're gonna find our balance. We could tap our toes of our crossed foot if we like, or we can pull up. All right, whichever leg is on top, let's take that arm across to the opposite shoulder. We're really doing like cross brain activity. Okay, so top leg corresponds to the bottom arm. And now let's lift our elbows. Make sure we're still breathing. And as gracefully as we can, like a bird, let's soar and release. All right, let's do the other side. So we did our good side the first time I'm betting, and we'll do our just as good side the second time. The idea is that we lay a blueprint in our minds by doing it on the good side the first time, and then the second side's supposed to be better. All these things we know, we could keep it more open, we could cross the ankles, anything you like. Okay, our top leg, same arm comes across, opposite arm comes over. You may know other variations of eagle. This one's a fairly accessible one to do while we're all twisted up. A nice opportunity to practice breathing into our back ribs. So if we take a breath in, our shoulder blades are spread here. We can breathe more easily into the back, kind of like cat pose. Gracefully if we can, let's soar. And let's release. Awesome. We'll go ahead and bring it down to the mat. And let's make our way through child's pose. But we're going to come all the way down to lie on our bellies. So we could do our final push-up of the evening if we like. And let's start with a stretch variation. So we're going to start with Sphinx. Knowing that everyone's range of motion in their backs is different, we can start propped up on our forearms. We could have our elbows in quite close and really be pushing down to get ourselves high up. I would say this is a less common range of motion for the average person's spine. You may have your arms way further forward, and this is a good challenge for you. So my thinking is that we're doing this to stretch out tension in the front of the torso so that it'll be easier in a second to work our back muscles. We might even like to practice while we're here, squeezing our back muscles, sliding our shoulder blades down towards our back pockets. We'll let this go. You might like a moment to rest your forehead down on the back of your hands or on the mat. We could windshield wipe the legs or turn the head side to side, maybe shake the hips off. Let's come back to this idea of rooting down to rise. So we're going to press the tops of the feet down, press the front of our hip bones down, and then let's rise up using the strength in our back. So we might want fingertips down to the mat for support. Maybe we want fingertips to our shoulders to remind ourselves to stay open. And let's keep the back of the neck long. So we can even tuck the chin. You don't need to look at me. I'm not doing anything for a moment. Making sure we're breathing and we're holding cobra. We may like, if our hips are still planted, to lift one or both legs. So if you've only lifted one leg, let's call that the halfway point and lift the other. Let's hold another 3, 2, 1, and again we'll release. We can take forehead down. And notice how your back is feeling. So you might feel like you really want to do a cat pose or a cow pose, or maybe just a neutral spine. Let's press up and back and find a good pose to counter the back bend that we just did. So I usually like to come into a flat back, just a neutral spine to let things balance out, or even take a seat. You might like to do a cat pose and stretch in the opposite direction. And then let's meet in a kneeling position. You can sit on your heels if you like, or come up to kneeling once again. We'll reach our hands back for a chest expansion. Again, we can still be rooted down through our knees and our feet, pushing down to lift the center of the chest up. Using our tricep and back muscles to pull our arms in behind us. Maybe we want to interlace our hands in behind. And if we are looking up, let's make sure that we can still comfortably swallow. If not, gone a little too far, we'll bring our chin a bit closer to chest. We'll let that go. And we'll make our way to a seated position. So we've done our fire building work. Let's do some cooling work. So I'll mirror you, let's say. So we're gonna breathe through the left nostril to cool the body down. The easy way or the straightforward way, go ahead and plug your right nostril. Breathe normally. So according to yogic philosophy, the right side of the body is our hot side. Muscular, hardworking, fiery. This is the nostril that should be open first thing in the morning when we wake and cortisol levels are rising. According to yogic philosophy, our left nostril relates to cooling, sleepy, more intimate feelings. Probably after lunch, you'll notice your left nostril is dominant and your right nostril is more plugged. If we want to look fancy, we can switch sides. So we can make like a surfer dude mudra. We're going to plug the right nostril and inhale left.
and then switch to exhale. So we always inhale on the left side inhale. Of course, it helps, not if our thoughts are on heat, harshness, hard work, but if our thoughts are on rest, recovery, softness, letting our shoulders drop away from our ears. If you're stuffy, this can always be done as a visualization. We could rest the hands and just visualize in the left, out the right. We can add to it and add a cool color. We can imagine that we're inhaling a cool blue. Maybe exhaling an icy silver tone. We can let that go. And let's get into some low intensity stretches. I'll give us the option for a fan favorite pigeon pose. We've done this before. I'll show us a couple different ways. Probably the least favorite way is to start seated. Bring ankle across thigh, similar to when we were standing, and then pull in. I would say this is an acquired taste. This is usually not the favorite. There's usually one in every group. The fan favorite is more often to bring one leg forward and press the opposite leg back. So we still have a similar kind of shape in our front leg. We can stay up and stay tall, or fold forward. And then our lazy version, our very soft, least harsh version, is to lie back. Same idea, ankle over thigh. And we can even pull in. And I will let you know if you choose to lie down, this is our last upright posture. So we'll be here for another minute, and then we'll meet you on the floor. So I'll give us a moment to unwind, unpretzel and rewind, and move on to the other side. Sometimes the second side, you'll want a different variation. That's not a bad thing. So again, our options, seated, we can have ankle over thigh, we can leave it like this. We can pull it in. If you choose the upright pigeon, one leg forward and the other leg back. Deer is just a different version with the back leg bent. That's even another one we could do. We can stay up. You might be up quite high if there's a lot of resistance in the hips. That's okay. And of course, we can bring it down to a sleeping pigeon. And if you're on your back, you've probably done it already. We switch sides.
feels like the second side roughly matches the first side. Let's make our way down to lie on our backs. And as much as twists can be very heat building, they can also be cooling if done in a gentle, restful manner. So let's do a gentle twist here today. From lying on our backs, we can draw knees to chest and give ourselves a big hug. And then let's let our feet go. Wherever they land is fine. Let's all go the same direction. So we'll pick up our hips and move them slightly to the right to give us more space for our knees to stack on the left. We can open our arms out to T. Let's see if we can slow the breath down here. Again, we may visualize cool air coming in through the left nostril and out through the right. Can we allow our muscles to melt a little bit more? And we'll go ahead and switch sides, coming back up through center. Maybe once again drawing knees to chest or a long stretch. We're ready to take our hips left and let our knees stack right. Maybe we're picturing inhaling the cool blue. Maybe we visualize the lungs filling with this cool blue air. And exhaling an icy silver. Let's make our way back to final relaxation. Traditionally, this is done lying on the back, arms and legs wide. You might like, again, to rock side to side or a long stretch before you get there. And since we have been building so much heat, sometimes it's nice to be a bit more spread eagle than we normally would be. Arms extra wide, feet extra wide. Option here to stretch out the exhale. So we can be inhaling for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 5, 6, 7, 8. And then noticing the pause after the exhale. And I've chosen for us a passage from The Soulful Journey of Recovery by Tan Dayton, who is a PhD, and this guide is a guide to really healing from a traumatic past, tough times in your past. And I highly recommend it. It has information and also sort of a workbook area to work through some of your own stuff, lifestyle and internal dialogue. And I've selected a section on negativity
bias, which especially I think kicks in for some of us more during tough times, but sometimes it's just something we carry around with us because our primitive brain is wired to scan for danger. This is at the base of what psychologists refer to as a negativity bias. If humans, animals, and reptiles weren't programmed to notice and read danger, we wouldn't still be here. It's natural to want to self-protect. This part of us can, however, get in the way of taking risks and trying new things. It asks us to go places within ourselves that feel dangerous, painful, and scary when we try new things, including getting to the light at the end of the tunnel and overcoming tough times. This is the tough part of self-development. This negativity bias can just pour out excuse after excuse as to why we shouldn't take a deeper look into ourselves. Esther Perel, speaker and author, talks about the community of first-generation Holocaust survivors that she grew up with in Belgium. She says that those who survived the camps fell into two broad groups. One, the group that went on living, and two, the group that came back to life. Our minds are meaning makers. We all need to make sense out of our own experience. This is a function of the thinking mind. We are interpreters of the circumstances of our lives because we are the ones living inside our own heads. We can choose to see the events and circumstances of our lives as dark and senseless, or, like a phoenix from the flame, as stepping stones on a path toward enlightenment. Seeing any kind of recovery or self-development as a path or a foundation through which we can learn to build a better, freer, and more purposeful life can be a part of how we author our own story. We write as we go, so write a good story because it's yours to write. And of course, feel free to stay where you are as long as you like. We may bring a hand to heart or hands to heart center. As always, thank you so much for joining me. And from my light to yours, namaste.